Welcome to my Monday morning meeting. This morning's special guest is Brian Moses, one of our successful graduate members from Nashua, New Hampshire, and Brian's going to be discussing working with prospects, in particular working with how to work with buyer prospects. Brian, how are you today?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me. In today's business world, time is our most precious commodity, and I promise to put forth 100% so that your time isn't wasted and that you'll get some good things out of this morning. Craig said that I didn't need to talk about attitude at all because your attitudes are all so great, but I couldn't help by just talking about it briefly, because everything really is about attitude. Attitude in and of itself isn't going to make you more money, but it'll put you in a state of mind or in a position where you can make more money. And on the front, you see this guy, this lost dog. He's got 3 legs. He's blind in the left eye. He's missing his right ear. His tail is broken. He's recently castrated, but he answers to the name of Lucky. So this attitude is so important, and I think in talking about the concept of working with prospects or working with buyers, really we need to start with what's going on up here in our mind. And a lot of times we put limitations on ourselves, thinking that the consumer will or will not go along with a concept or an idea because of our own attitudes. What's ironic and what's interesting is back in my office, I come up with ideas, Craig comes up with ideas, and we try to integrate them into our business. In my office, all of my agents have no experience. They come in and we have Tuesday night trainings and we start from ground zero. And a lot of my ideas are tested in the marketplace because they're accepted like an idea would be accepted to a child. You tell a child that to learn French or learn German or learn Spanish, they accept it like it's absolutely possible and they can, and as a result will learn it much faster. So my new agents are learning much faster, and what we're doing in our marketplace is quite different and unique from other marketplaces in our area. Wouldn't it be great if we could get buyers and sellers to beg to do business with us, to just see so much value in all that we have to offer that they just lay down on the floor and say, and give up, and just throw their arms up in the air and say, what do I have to do business with you guys? Now, if that's the goal, if that's the idea, we want to create something that's so valuable to them that they will do that. I often talk at my staff meetings that working with prospects, it's almost like speaking 2 different languages. Because real estate doesn't happen. Buyer doesn't wake up one morning, for example, and say, I'm going to own a new home tomorrow. It's a process. Something causes them to look into it, and it's a process, and 3 months down the road, they end up owning a new home. But nobody just wakes up that morning. But the problem in real estate today is that real estate salespeople, our competitors, will try to jam them into a home over the weekend. The prospect calls in, and what we're trying to do is sell the prospect over the phone, and that's not going to work. So the 2 languages that we need to learn how to speak, in my eyes, is to equate to perception as reality and give the prospect initially over the phone what it is they're looking for. Now, what they're looking for oftentimes is so far from reality, but it's their perception. And I'll get into that a little bit deeper. Meaning they're calling, and their perception, a buyer's perception, is that they're going to call and they're going to eliminate properties. They're trying to they're trying to find the perfect house, essentially. And we in the business know that there's no such thing as a perfect house. We also know that real estate is a process, it's not an event. But the buyers are trying to get information because they don't know the right way to go about it. So that while they're calling every realtor in town asking them information on a particular property, and the agents are giving them the information that they're calling on, the buyers know closer to their goal, which is owning a house, than they were at the beginning. So what we want to do is we want to identify what's important to the buyers, what's important to the sellers, so that we can kind of lead them to their own conclusion. On the second page, talking about perception as reality, this is a good cartoon or a good graphic illustration of everybody's perception as reality. Here's a guy painting his boat, and it's obviously his first boat. And his perception is, I've got a boat, I'm going to paint it, but the reality of the situation is nobody else can read it. The third page is a cartoon, and I just got this from a recent Caldwell Banker Management Conference, and this is one of my favorites, we hear all the time about you can't do that in this marketplace, or that won't work here, or this won't work. Going back to the cowboy and Indian days. Here's two cowboys hiding behind the barrels while the Indians are not only launching arrows at them, but they're lighting them on fire. And the cowboys are doing nothing about it, but they're just sitting back saying, hey, they're lighting their arrows on fire. Can they do that? What I'm here to share with you this morning, I hope, is that we can create a system that will work in your marketplace, it'll work in my marketplace, and it'll work in any marketplace in the world because buyers and sellers ultimately want the same thing. My goal was, in my marketplace, is to turn buyers into a dollar productive activity. We've all been trained that listings are the name of the game and you need to list to last and list. And listings really are a good dollar productive activity because you look at the time invested in a listing. You do a CMA, you go out to someone's house, they list with you if you do a good presentation. You have maybe a couple of hours invested. The people back at the office process it. You get a call, Mike, and say someone's got an offer on your listing. You've got maybe another hour invested in it, and you're going to make a couple $1,000. So that's a good use of your time. Buyers can be the same highly productive and profitable use of your time if it's approached in the right way with the right mindset. What we do, and we'll just give you an overview and then we'll dive into it and tell you how we do it, but our goal is to increase the dollar productive and profitability of a buyer. And buyers are easier to come by than sellers. Would you agree? I mean, buyers are easier to come across and find than sellers. So if you've got a large pool or more people to choose from, all the more reason for us to create the rules. And if we look at listing, I'm just going to go to the blackboard for a minute. If we look at listings and we think about the rules of the game in real estate that are profitable, and we look at listings and the process involved in a listing, we find the prospect, we go to their house, we do a presentation, we negotiate a fee, and then hopefully, eventually, it ultimately amounts in a sale. The process can be the same with buyers now with the advent of buyer agency. So if we look at buyers, the process can be exactly the same. We find the prospect, we do a presentation. This is a big one. I'm going to talk about this today. We're going to negotiate our fee with the buyer because traditionally it's always been up to the seller. And then eventually we'll have a sale. And the amount of time really can go way down. In my market last year, in a very inventory scarce market, inventory was scarce. If I relied 100% like most agents on listings, I would have starved to death. We did about 70% of our business working with buyers last year. But the way that we work with the buyers is that we educate and counsel and lead them to their own conclusion. And that's why they want to work with a buyer agent. Because as we mentioned earlier, that most buyers don't know the process. And our job is to bring them closer in the process. Now the interesting thing is, when we tried this for the first time, it was kind of an experiment. We took Craig's concepts and ideas and we said, this is our goal. We want a buyer to sign a contract, give us a commitment. Because how many times in the old ways of sub-agency or just non-representation, we take a buyer, we work our tails off, and the buyer buys from someone else. That's happened to all of us. That used to drive me absolutely mad. You'd work with a buyer for 3 weeks and you get the dreaded phone call on Monday morning, Bri, well, you were out of town, or, we love you, we like you, you did everything great, it's nothing that you did, but we found a house by chance with another agent and we bought it over the weekend. And what do you say to that person? You say, well, geez, I'm really happy for you. And you kind of got mixed emotions in your stomach. You're really not happy for him because you're not happy for yourself. But that was the reality of the situation. I said, okay, I'm not going to last in this business if that's the way it's going to be. So then we created a system to work with prospects. In the system, in order for the system to work, Craig, I learned this from Craig, but buyers and sellers and really everybody, and I want to talk about this before I talk about the system. Everybody is tuned into WIFM. What's in it for me? And if you're calling a buyer back or a seller back or dealing with somebody in a negotiation and you're not aware of this, consciously aware of this, then the end result will never happen. What's in it for me? That's all buyers care about. Now let's go to the example of the lost commission that I just explained. The buyer who likes me, loves me, trusts me, told me I did a great job for them, bought a house from another agent. Why? Because the other agent found them the house, or they found the right house. So as much as that buyer liked me, loved me, trusted me, what was in it for them on that moment in time, they were going to do. I'll give you a different example of what's in it for me. Harold, everybody's bought a car. And this is probably the easiest example to point out. Everybody buys a car. Let's say Harold's looking for a car. And Craig's Harold's best friend. And Craig is selling the kind of cars that Harold's looking for. Let's use the example of a Volvo. And Harold goes to Craig because Harold likes Craig, trusts Craig, loves Craig. They're very close and tight. And Craig says, the price of my car is $28,000. We're going to give it to you at $100 over cost because you're my friend. And Harold's ready to sign, but he says, you know what? I really better run this by the wife. And Harold's reticular activator goes on. And your reticular activator is when you're looking for a new car, all of a sudden you start noticing all the other cars. It's true in real estate too. When buyers are starting to look at real estate, they notice all the other signs, they notice all the other ads, and it's much more competitive. So Harold's wife says, Harold, by the way, I saw this in the paper. Here's this ad. Look at this price. Same car, $10,000 less. So Harold says, geez, you know, I like Craig, I trust Craig, but what's going on? So Harold inquires about this car, and what happens is the guy says, yeah, we've got the biggest dealership in town. We're able to be more competitive because of costs. Not only are we able to be more competitive, but we can give you that car for $10,000 less, but if and when you change your oil or need service, we're going to give you a free loaner car, which Craig's small shop couldn't do. Not only that, if you can't get the car here, we've got somebody that will come out and pick up your car for you. So Harold says, this is too good to be true. He goes down there, and sure enough, it's all true. What does Harold do? Who does he buy the car from? Well, Harold's thinking, what's in it for me? He says, Craig, I like you. You're my brother. You're my best friend. But guess what? I'm going to buy this car from somebody else. And that's true in real estate. So when you're thinking about buyers and sellers, you need to think about what's in it for them. And we're going to talk about those two languages, just so that I don't forget. You didn't realize that this was going to be a course in being bilingual. But by the end of today, you're going to be able to speak two different sets of languages for buyers and sellers. One set is to give them the perception that they want. The other one is the reality. This is very important. Over the telephone, if you start going down here, you're going to lose them every single time. Everything that you say may be 100% true and accurate, but over the telephone, you're going to lose them if you don't give them what they want. So let's talk about what they want. Well, this is really geared towards buyers. But don't buyers want something for nothing? So they want value. Or they want a $200,000 house for a $100,000 house. And just to do a test, a litmus test on that, if we have a buyer that qualifies for $100,000 and we could get them a $200,000 house, would they want that?
Yes.
So if the answer is yes, then we know that that's important. That's the litmus test. So buyers want value. They also want selection. And they want convenience or hassle-free. And there's other things that buyers want, but these are the three that are most important. So what I'm going to do is, when we do the two languages, I'm going to try to link how initially I'm going to give the buyer perception. I'm going to give the buyer perception. And we're in a position where we can give the buyers and sellers anything that we want because we negotiate the terms and the way that we're going to do business. I went to an ABR class, Accredited Buyer Representation class, because I wanted to learn more about buyer agency. I'm not recommending the class. It was a good class. I got a lot of good things out of it. But one statistic thing that I got out of it is in the traditional way that we work with buyers. For every 10 buyers we take in our car and show property to, one would buy across the nation. Now think about the amount of time involved in working with 10 buyers, explaining the process, showing them property, writing offers. One would result in a sale. 10 buyers signed to contracts. 10 buy. This got me convinced, and then I created the system. So this works, and you're working a lot less. This is a lot less than this, obviously.
Well, you're being paid for your work.
Yeah, and
100%.
I'm going to show you how to get paid up front. I drew this glass on the board, and you know, we've all heard the paradigm expression, the glass is either half full or half empty. The choice is yours to make. In both cases, you'd be right. If Craig said it's half empty, he's right. If Lindy says it's half full, she would be right because the water is halfway filled in the glass or halfway empty. The truth is the same in real estate. We can look at it from the half full opportunity or the half empty opportunity. I can't tell you what to do or make you do it. You've got to come to your own conclusion and look at it as, this is an opportunity for me, and I'm going to look at it from all of the positives. What I found after 10 years of selling real estate, this is the best one that I found so far working with buyers. So let's talk about the perception and go back to working with buyers. Buyers don't want counseling. They don't want direction. They want selection. If you guys will understand this, this will be a lot of money for you. Okay, selection is number one. Initially, this is initially what they want. In the end, they want $1 million house for $100,000. They want value. But I haven't found a way to articulate value over the telephone. And if you find a way, this will probably be better than this. But what I found works 8 out of 10 times is selection. So let's talk about why a buyer would call us. They'd call for a free report. They'd call on a house. They'd call on an ad. They'd call because they were a referral. They know somebody. What other reasons would they call?
Open house, Sunday tour.
Oh, Sunday tour. And, you know, it doesn't matter why they call, is my point. It does not matter. This works for all of these. Now, remember, it's important, too, to understand that it's a process, not an event. All of these are what Greg and I would call hooks to get them to call you. Ultimately, they want the free report. They want the price on the house. They want to know where the property is located. They want to get together with you, whatever the case may be.
That's the purpose for that mechanism.
To get them to call you.
And the only purpose. The purpose is not to sell the house. The purpose is not to sell you. The purpose of advertising is to do one thing, get prospects to raise their hand and say, I'm in the market to buy.
So that you have an opportunity to meet with them. Would we agree that we can't sell a house over the telephone?
Yes. Not yet.
Not yet. Would we also agree that we probably can't get a client over the telephone?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got to put an end. We've got to make the decision here today, this morning, that we're not going to give information about all of the benefits that we offer over the telephone. That's not going to work.
Maybe like talking 10 or 15 minutes about all the features and benefits of a house.
Right.
You're never going to sell the house over the telephone.
Never.
You're never going to sell yourself over the telephone. So the purpose of the lead generation mechanism is to get a prospect to raise their hand. The purpose of that phone call is to do what?
Now it's get a point.
Communicate benefits so they're compelled, not manipulated, but compelled to want to come into the office or you go to their home.
So the USP is the hook to generate the phone call.
Right.
The selection
is going to be
is
your
then
answer.
the hook to get them.
Right, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And we'll lead you to your own conclusion. You guys will be the buyers, and I'll take any one of these examples, and I'm always going to come to selection. See how simple? It's going to be really simple because you're going to be focusing. To take it one step further, it's free lists. Buyers they're early in the process. They want to see everything that's out there. Now, once we get together, we're going to take them from here to here, and I'll show you how to do that too.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? Does everyone understand why the free information, obtaining the free information, is so desirable by buyers? What do they normally have to do to get information on houses?
They can't
Right.
get anywhere else.
Drive around the city or
What-
check
what-
ads or check the newspaper?
Isn't this what most real estate agents do with information?
Yeah.
This is the MLS information. Because I have no USPs, I have nothing unique, no benefits to offer customers. All I have is this guarded information called MLS,
And I love
which is
the-
now
I
not
love
so
the
guarded.
report.
Now it's on the internet. This isn't such a big deal. Our whole strategy is giving away the information. It contradicts what everyone else is in the marketplace, what other agents are doing. So if you think of a buyer that's out there today, the only way they can get information on a house is to call their brains out off of the newspaper every week, to drive around all the neighborhoods that they're looking in, calling off all of the for sale signs, and every single real estate agent that they speak with tries to do what?
And that's the client.
Try to sell them. Okay?
They're trying to sell them the house.
Exactly, they're the gatekeepers, and you have to get through this gatekeeper to get the information. And what they teach you is they teach you to play this cat and mouse game with buyers. You know, Harold, you tell me your name, your address, and your phone number, and I'll give you some of the information on the house. Now, think of from a buyer's point of view, if they have to jump through these hoops every single time that they inquire about a property, and then all of a sudden they call Brian's office, and what happens at your office?
We get them to come in to meet with us and want to meet with us.
By offering?
A free list, and I'm going to tell you how we offer it, but it's free listings of all of the homes that match your criteria. And that's really important, but we agreed earlier, and I keep coming back to this, it's a process, it's not an event. So we know that the buyer that's calling us is not going to buy a house today, right? It's a process. It's probably going to be in a week to 3 weeks to 4 weeks. So here's what happened when you start embracing the system. If you're starting at ground zero, you're brand new with Craig's office, you have maybe a few leads, but no clients, nothing. Over time, the longer you're using this system, now you've got a continuous flow of sales. The sale happens at the moment or at the event, but the event doesn't happen without all of this other stuff. So don't be frustrated when you get a buyer that's 3 months away from being ready to buy the house. That's okay, that's called normal. In fact, that's probably more normal than the opposite. By continuing to fill up your pipeline, you guys have the technology, the follow-up, the contact management to keep these people in the process so that eventually, after a few months, you have lots of sales happening every single month.
And if you really look at growth of your business, right now, 1 in 8 home sellers, 1 in 8 listings in the New Market area last year, 1 in 8 listings that sold had our sold sign on. So you look at the fact that there's 5,000 agents in the area. Where's our growth opportunity? Sure, we might be able to go up a little bit. I think we sold 50% of the listings last year in New Market. So let's say we really turned it on and we go up to 20% of listings sold. That our market share increases from 15 to 20%. But I think our real growth opportunity is with buyers.
Especially if you're going to be in the business for a few years, because if you control the buyers, you control tomorrow's inventory.
And if you control buyers, you control today's inventory, because many of the buyers you work with, of course, are going to have listings. And the easiest way to get listings is work with a buyer that has a house to sell.
This whole buyer agency thing has been the best thing that I've ever done in my business. The best one single decision.
Well, you said something earlier too. You said it's easier to get a buyer to respond to you than a seller. Now think about that. For first-time buyers, obviously they have nothing to sell, so they're going to be responding only as buyers. But for anybody that has a house, if Harold has a house, before he decides to list his house, what is he thinking of first? Where he's going to go
Exactly.
to, right? He's not going to make a decision to list a house based on, I just decided I don't want this house anymore. He's going to be thinking first and foremost about where he's going to go to next. So it's easier to get all sellers to respond as a buyer. Once I get Harold to respond as a buyer, naturally I'm going to get his listing. Well, if I have him signed up to a buyer contract. So I know you love listings, and this is going to help us get a lot more listings as well. It's going to help lock in those buyers. Formerly, what we'd do is what would we do, Carol? We'd send Harold buyer profile for about 3 or 4 months. We'd get a nice phone call, as you indicated, from Harold, all happy on a Monday morning that he bought a house, an open house on the weekend.
Guess what? I bought a house.
Right.
I
And
don't need
another
the buyer
agent
profiles
would not
anymore.
only get the buyer end, would also list your house.
That's it.
And we did all the work. Quite often, a house that maybe we introduced them through our buyer profiling system.
If you just trust me and give me a chance with this, and if you all embrace this and try it, you will be calling me, thanking me, because you'll be working easier, not harder, and you'll be doing a lot more business. Brian Tracy says this. He says, if you have the formula or the combination to the lock, success is yours. There's so many real estate agents that don't have the right winning formula or combination. What we're going to give everybody here today is the winning combination to get buyers to come here, sign a contract, and stroke you a check. Now you know that you're working with somebody that means business, and they're worth your time. So we'll talk about that, but compelling is the answer. Now we're going to talk about the two languages. Okay, we agree that buyers need value and selection. And just to kind of get a feedback, do you guys like the concept of negotiating your fee with a buyer? I mean, let me ask you this. If what's one of your competitors? Sutton Group, right? Sutton's up here. Are we in a competitive market in Toronto, in the Newmarket area, like we are back in the States?
Yes.
Where agents have less and less to offer, they're not able to articulate value, so the seller's perception is what? Fee, right? So the sellers are calling and saying, before they even want to meet with you, what do you charge, Harold? And Harold tries to dance around it and skirt the issue because he knows that the lowest fee isn't going to get him the best service, but that's what the sellers are looking for right now.
How many times do we receive phone calls into the office where it's a seller prospect and the first question they ask is, how much do you charge? So what Brian's saying is that's their perception, is that's what's going to be best for me, is just getting someone to do it for the lowest price. So
That's because they see real estate as a commodity.
Absolutely.
we all do the same thing. So want to chop on price. You know, it's like an apple is an apple, right? You don't really know if you buy a bad apple until you bite into one. But at the grocery store, they all look the same.
So-
Same thing with real estate agents.
So let's say, are commissions 5 to 6% in your market?
Yes.
Are they even lower?
Sometimes.
4.5%? Are people doing that? Maybe you
Yes.
guys aren't doing it? 4.5%. Anyone seen any lower deals out there in the marketplace?
3.5.
Do you know how they're doing it? Are they putting it in MLS? What would their
That's
split be?
if they double ended, if they bring their own buyer.
Okay, so 3.5. But this is a problem, right? For us, because our income is going down and we're having to work harder unless we can turn this around.
Correct.
So now let's say that 5% is a nice even number. Do they put out in the MLS how much they will pay RE/MAX Omega to bring a buyer?
Yes.
2.5%? Is that normal?
Generally, it's split in half.
Okay, if we were to go through the listings, what's average? What's being offered out?
2.5 is offered 95% of the time.
Okay.
Regardless of what they take it at.
Now your average sales price is about 200,000 or more.
200.
200 is a good number. Just imagine, and don't judge my ideas yet. Just imagine that you could get 3 or 3.5% every single time you worked with a buyer. Now, if you didn't get it every single time, but you got it half the time or 3/4 of the time, would it impact your bottom line at the end of the year?
Yes.
By a lot.
By a lot.
Craig's getting excited. He's saying
Money.
another percent over what's being offered in the MLS on a 50-50 split. That means 0.5% to the agent, 0.5% to the company. That's a lot. That's a lot of revenue. Lindy, how many houses did you sell last year?
About 70.
A boatload, right? So you got 70 times an extra $500. No, actually, it's $1,000. I'm thinking in my market, because 1% of 200,000 is $2,000. So an extra $1,000 to Lindy is $70,000 without working any harder.
Right. Just by learning the technique here today.
Now, if Lindy says, well, but that's not going to work 100% of the time, maybe it won't. What if it worked half the time? There's an extra $35,000 for Lindy last year. There's an extra $35,000 for Craig to put in advertising and marketing and systems and team members to make it easier for you.
But if we get everybody doing it,
It's huge. It's huge. It's quantum. It's exponential. What we do is I'm in your market and I'm doing this. I'm on Craig's team and I sell Sutton Group's listing. 2.5% offered. I do what you probably do. We show the house. The buyer likes the house. He wants to make an offer. Before I go through all that, I'm going to call the agent and make sure the house is still available, right? Because I don't want to write an offer and then find out that the house is sold. So assuming that I do all my normal stuff and find out that the house is still available, are there any other offers on it? I'm going to get a yes or no. If there are other offers on the house, it's either a yes or no question. If the answer is no, great, no problem. I'm going to write an offer, and I'm going to have 1% built into the agreement to cover the difference in my fee. And there's a sample buyer agreement in your package that shows you seller agrees to pay X dollars towards buyer's closing costs. Your commission with a buyer is a closing cost to a buyer. So that's no problem. If the agent says, yeah, actually we've got multiple offers, we've got 2 other offers, and I'll try to find out how do they look, do they look good. If the agent's doing a great job for their seller, they're not going to tell me anything, but I'm going to try. But I know that there's 2 other offers, so now I've got a situation with my buyer. I really want the buyer to get the house because I don't want to be showing property forever, number 1. Number 2, I really do care about my clients, and I don't want to put my fee in the way of them securing the house. So here's what I do with the buyer. Harold, we're going to make an offer on this property. There are 2 other offers, so I need to give you some counsel so that we can put you in the best position to secure this property. Now Harold's ears are up because he wants this house. I think there's some things that we need to look at. Number 1, the listing agent is offering out 2.5%. You and I are under agreement for 3.5%. So we're short 1%. We can do a couple of things here. We can ask the seller to pay for that, but in reality, this could be deemed something that would keep you from getting the house. So we can take care of that outside of the transaction if you want, meaning that the house is listed for $200, seller wants to close in 30 days, you're okay with this, you're okay with this. How do you want to handle this, Harold? Do you want to build it in, or do you want to take care of it outside of? But Harold probably, we have buyers say, I'll just write you a check for the $2,000, Bri, or Wally or Paul. They see value in what we're doing. I'm putting the decision on Harold. The answer is no if you don't ask. Harold says, geez, so I got to pay $200 house plus $2,000? Yes, Harold, and that's still no guarantee that you get the house. But if you don't get the house, you don't pay this. So Harold says, well, geez, you know what, Harold? I don't want our fee to come in the way of the transaction. What if I split that with you? What if I dropped my fee $1,000? Would you feel better? Now Harold feels that I'm doing something for him. I'm still in a position that I was better at the 2.5 because I'm getting 2.5% plus $1,000.
Now, my next question is, the way we write up our contracts, we disclose who we represent and who we're being paid by.
Right.
So, what do we say? We're being paid by the purchaser and the vendor?
Who are you being paid by? When we list the property at 7%, the seller thinks they're paying the commission, right? Right? Because it affects their net. But really, without the buyer, there is no transaction. So what the ABR course said is it said that, look, we've got a whole pie and there's $200,000 in the pie. It affects the seller's net. The seller gets all this. Okay? The seller doesn't get this. But it affects the buyer's gross. Without the buyer bringing the money to the table, there is no transaction. So who really pays the commission? Because it's the buyer's money that allows this transaction to happen. So here's what we say. How we get paid is from the proceeds of sale. And I'm going to ask you, and please write this down. You get paid from the proceeds of sale. So when a buyer or seller asks you, you get paid from the proceeds of sale. It requires both the buyer and the seller for a real estate transaction to go through, and it also requires both the buyer and seller for you to get paid. So you get paid from the proceeds of sale. So it's not free to a seller, and it's not free to a buyer. But there's the issue of value. We're under agreement with our buyer for 3.5%. This comes from the proceeds of sale. So if the house is listed at $200,000, our fee comes from that. If we write it up, there's no other offers, and we say this is the list price of the house, and the seller is to pay us $2,000 towards our closing costs, that means the seller nets $198. That's not a full price offer to the seller, and the seller doesn't have to accept it. If we go to $202, and the seller pays 2. Seller gets what they want, and the buyer may be perfectly happy with 202. So it comes from the proceeds of sale. And then there's Harold's example where I said, you know what, I don't want this to get in the way. Do you want to take care of it outside of the transaction? Do you want to pay us separately? So we'll take the 2.5 at the closing, the 2.5% at the closing, and the check won't be done on the side. We're going to be above board. On your buyer transactions at your office, we still collect the 2.5% at closing, and there's a line saying Sutton Group and there's a line saying Caldwell Banker. They each get, 10 grand or whatever 2.5% comes out to. But now there's an extra line, and our commission line, I should have brought one, settlement statement is always higher because we're earning more money per transaction, and it's disclosed at the closing. I hope I didn't confuse you, but it's really important that you know, if you get it, how to collect it, right?
How does that affect A on your list here?
The list is free. We're providing you with the list. We're not charging you for the list.
Okay, and then B?
There's no cost, no obligation, because cost is an issue in the absence of value. What I believe to the buyers is that if I'm going to put you in front of more homes, you're going to get the right home. And if I put you there faster than the other buyers, you're going to get the best value for your home. And for that, there's value.
So the opposite argument that you would have for sellers.
Right. Yeah, the opposite argument that I would have for sellers. But when I say free, we educate our buyers in our buyer presentation how we get paid. We get paid from the proceeds of sale. All I want to do is put myself in a position where I can earn more money when I earn it, and it doesn't impact the transaction. So let's say that I'm running into a brick wall. There's 10 offers on the property. The buyer, let's say, just doesn't have it. What about the scenario where the buyer can only afford $200,000? That's it, their max. There's 3 offers. You know what, Harold? What's being offered is 2.5%. We're under agreement for 3.5%. We're 1% short. Harold says, I don't have it. But he respects the fact that we have an arrangement. He's not bitching at Brian because it's all the words. What's being offered is 2.5. We're under agreement for 3.5%. Harold says, I don't have it. You know what, Harold? I'm not going to let this stand in the way of you getting a chance to own a home. I'll forego that 1% if you can get me 3 or 4 solid referrals over the next few months. Would you be willing to do that?
Sure.
Okay? Now, Harold is obligated. And
These are all called takeaways. You see, the problem is we start at the baseline and there's nowhere to go from there.
exactly. I'll give up this. This is $2,000 out of my
It's
pocket.
only on this property.
Right. We go back to the next one. Well,
If he doesn't get this
there's-
property and the next one he wants
right.
190.
We're under agreement for 3.5. And Harold's thanking me for doing it, as opposed to the typical relationship we have with our buyers.